Eleanor Hughes had been teaching English at a private city school for over 2 decades. A middle-aged woman with graying hair and expressive blue eyes, she embodied wisdom and experience. Her passion wasn't just in imparting knowledge of the classics, but in understanding her students on a personal level. She believed that this deeper connection helped in mentoring them not only in academics, but also in life. To aid her in this self-assigned task, Eleanor had, over the years, started maintaining a diary. Within its leather-bound pages, she noted down more than just teaching strategies or student grades. Personal tidbits, students' aspirations, fragments of conversations overheard in hallways, and sometimes even their fears and secrets found their way into her diary. To Eleanor, this wasn't an invasion of privacy, but a tool to assist, to reach out when she felt a student was troubled. One Monday, the usual calm of her morning was shattered when she found her desk drawer ajar. The contents were in disarray, and her diary was conspicuously missing. Panic seized her as she imagined the plethora of private information now potentially exposed. She reported the theft to the school management but kept the true nature of the diary's contents to herself, hoping it might turn up or was just an innocent prank by the student. However, as days turned into a week, Eleanor began hearing troubling accounts from her students. Lucas, a bright-eyed boy with a flair for poetry, approached her, his face pale. "Miss Hughes, a man approached me at the park yesterday. He recited one of my poems, one I'd written just for myself. He said he was a fan. How could he have known?" The color drained from Eleanor's face. It wasn't just Lucas. Over the next few days, more students recounted similar eerie encounters with strangers who seemed to know far too much about their personal lives. Feeling the weight of responsibility and ridden with guilt, Eleanor approached the police. She was introduced to Detective Raymond, a stern man with sharp features and an analytical mind. Eleanor handed over a list of the students who had been approached and detailed the contents of her diary. Raymond immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. "Someone has that diary and is using it to profile potential targets," he deduced. Night after night, Eleanor was tormented by guilt-ridden nightmares. The boundaries she had established between her professional and personal life seemed to crumble. However, one evening, a sinister turn of events propelled her fear to new heights. A letter arrived at her residence. The neatly typed message read, "I have your secrets. How much are they worth to you? How much is the safety of your students worth?" Raymond suggested setting a trap. "We need to draw this person out," he stated. They decided that Eleanor would act as bait, while the police maintained surveillance on her. The kidnapper, growing bolder by the day, began sending Eleanor cryptic messages detailing his next move. It was a terrifying cat and mouse game. One fateful evening, another message arrived. "Meet me at the old Anderson warehouse by the river at midnight. Come alone or your students will suffer." Eleanor was apprehensive, but Raymond saw an opportunity. "We'll have officers stationed all around. We'll wire you with a microphone. We're going to catch this man," he promised. The night was overcast, the moon concealed behind dense clouds, rendering the city in near darkness. Eleanor, feeling vulnerable, made her way to the warehouse, the echoing of her footsteps a constant reminder of the danger she was in. Inside the cavernous space of the warehouse, shadows danced as the few overhead lights flickered. The stillness was suddenly shattered by a voice. "Miss Hughes, so we finally meet," it echoed. Out of the shadows emerged a tall man, face partially hidden by a cap. His eyes, however, bore into Eleanor with chilling intensity. "I want my diary back," Eleanor whispered, trying to mask her fear. "Leave my students alone." He chuckled, a cold, emotionless sound. "That diary, Miss Hughes, is a treasure trove. So many secrets, so many vulnerable souls." Suddenly, the eerie quiet of the warehouse was pierced by sirens. The man's eyes widened, realizing the trap he'd walked into. From all directions, police officers stormed in, their flashlights converging on the kidnapper. Detective Raymond emerged, handcuffs in hand. The aftermath was a whirlwind of revelations. The man, whose name was revealed to be Martin Greaves, was a career criminal specializing in kidnappings and blackmail. He had chanced upon Eleanor's diary and saw an opportunity for a big score. The school, parents, and students hailed Eleanor as a hero, but the incident left deep scars on her psyche. She took a sabbatical, using the time to reflect, heal, and pen down her traumatic experiences. Months later, Eleanor's book, titled A Diary's Curse, hit the shelves. It was an instant bestseller, not just because of its suspenseful narrative, but because it served as a stark reminder of the dangers of oversharing and the dark corners where reality and paranoia merge. While Eleanor returned to teaching, she was forever changed. The trust she once took for granted had boundaries now. The diary was replaced with a digital journal, encrypted and protected. The incident, though harrowing, also taught her the importance of privacy and discretion in an increasingly interconnected world. When I moved to this sleepy town, it was to escape the chaos of the city and to find a simpler life. I was 34 and had spent a decade teaching in the rough parts of the city. Those children were hard, shaped by circumstance and environment, but they had resilience. I wanted to help them, and I tried my best, but the burnout was real. After years there, I needed a reprieve. The peace and quiet of this small community, where everyone knew everyone else, seemed like the perfect remedy. I imagined a classroom where my only challenge would be to keep children from daydreaming about playing in the sunshine. I was only supposed to be a temporary substitute teacher at the local elementary school, filling in while Mrs. Foster was on maternity leave. Her second-grade classroom was decorated in soft pastels. Cheerful drawings plastered every inch of the walls, and the chairs were arranged in a welcoming semicircle. The children, all bright eyes and wide smiles, had taken to me with ease, and I cherished their innocence. One day during recess, I began organizing the classroom. My gaze wandered to a seemingly abandoned desk in the back corner. It was cluttered with loose papers and worn-out books. Curious, I decided to tidy it up. As I sifted through the papers, a folded note slipped out, its edges tattered and stained. Opening it, I read, "He hits me when mommy isn't home. I don't like going home. Please help me." Chills ran down my spine. My heart raced as I tried to process the message. Who had written this? Why had no one seen it before? I had to do something, but I had no idea which child this desk belonged to. Throughout the day, I paid closer attention to the children, searching for any signs of distress or unusual behavior, but they'd all seemed typical, carefree, vibrant, and joyful. As the hours passed, my unease deepened, and the looming weight of responsibility pressed upon me. I had to find out who wrote that note. Later that afternoon, I approached Mrs. Simmons, the school's counselor, with the note in hand. Her brow furrowed with concern as she read it. "This is serious," she said. "We have to handle this delicately. Let's monitor the children closely. See if we can figure out who it is without alarming anyone." For days, I watched the children like a hawk. Every little bruise or scratch, every flinch or hesitancy to answer, magnified my anxiety. But no child showed the unmistakable signs of abuse I'd seen in the city. It was maddening, and the paranoia gripped me. One evening after class, I took a stroll around town to clear my head. I visited the local diner and met Sam, a rugged-looking man in his 40s with a scruffy beard and piercing blue eyes. He was the town's sheriff and often enjoyed his evening coffee there. "You're the new substitute, aren't you?" Sam asked, noticing my school badge. "Yes," I replied, sipping my coffee. "Hope those kids aren't giving you too much trouble," he grinned. With a deep breath, I decided to confide in him about the note. Actually, I found something troubling in one of the students' desks. Sam's expression changed immediately. I showed him the note, and he read it solemnly. "We'll have to investigate," he said, his tone grave. Over the next few weeks, Sam and I discreetly observed the families as they dropped off or picked up their children. We even visited a few homes under the guise of standard school check-ins, but no matter where we looked or how deeply we probed, nothing seemed out of place. Every family was warm and welcoming, their homes filled with love and laughter. I began to question myself. Had I made a mistake? Was the note just a figment of some child's imagination? But every time I felt my resolve wane, the raw desperation of the message pulled me back. Then, one day, I made a discovery. As I was reorganizing the classroom again, I found another note beneath the same desk, hidden even more carefully than the first. He found the note. "He's angrier now. Please help." A new wave of terror crashed over me. The stakes were even higher now, and time was of the essence. The guilt of not having discovered the child yet tore at my heart. I approached Sam with the new note, and his face paled. "We need to act now," he said. We decided to interview each child individually, away from the school and in a secure environment. We set up in the community center after school hours. One by one, I sat with them, gently asking about their home life, their family, any problems they might be facing. Each child's story was heartwarming, even humorous at times, but none revealed the horror I feared. The evening wore on, and my hope waned. Then, the last student, a quiet girl named Molly with chestnut hair and freckles, sat down. She looked at me with eyes that seemed older than her years, and my heart clenched with an unspoken understanding. "Molly," I whispered, "is it you?" She broke into silent sobs, nodding. I was scared to say anything. He said he'd hurt my mommy if I did. Sam immediately intervened, assuring Molly that she and her mother would be protected. Within hours, Molly's father was apprehended. We learned he'd been abusing her for years, using the threat against her mother to maintain her silence. The relief of resolving the situation was palpable, but I was haunted by the thought of how close we'd come to never discovering the truth. Molly and her mother eventually moved away, starting fresh in a new town. I left teaching soon after, finding solace in counseling, helping other children like Molly find their voice. In the town's quiet streets and the echoing laughter of children playing, there's a haunting reminder that darkness can hide in the most unexpected places. Always watch, always listen, for behind the most innocent eyes, a silent plea might be waiting. My name is Clara. I was only 21 when I got my first real job as a receptionist at St. Peter's High School. Fresh out of college, I was eager to start and to prove myself. The school was a fortress of brick and tradition, with long corridors echoing the laughter, shouts, and whispers of generations. The front office was where I sat, a hub of ringing telephones, announcements, and face-to-face interactions. One overcast Wednesday, just after the morning bell signaled the start of lessons, the phone buzzed with its familiar urgency. I picked it up, expecting another parent explaining why their child would be late. Instead, I heard a frantic voice, barely above a whisper. "This is Mrs. Walters, my son, Tom Walters. He's in grave danger. Please get him to the front office. I'm right outside waiting." Mrs. Walters? I had just met her last week during a parent-teacher meeting, but something felt off. Her voice seemed a touch too desperate, a shade too high-pitched. I hesitated for a second, but fear for the student propelled me into action. I immediately radioed his classroom. Minutes later, Tom Walters stood in front of me, bewildered. "My mom's here," he asked. I nodded and guided him outside, but there was no car in the parking space. No distressed mother. Nothing. Confused, I called Mrs. Walters' number from the directory. She answered on the third ring, her voice calm. "Clara, is everything okay?" I explained the call. Her voice went icy cold. "I didn't call you. I'm at a conference in Boston." My heart raced, and I felt a chill creep down my spine. Who had imitated Mrs. Walters, and to what end? It didn't stop there. Every week, like clockwork, I'd receive another call. The voice, always mirroring a parent's tone, begged me to send a student out for a fabricated emergency. I grew wary, double-checking with parents before acting on any call. Then, one afternoon, the atmosphere grew tense, suffocatingly so. I had just dismissed another bogus call when the phone rang again. Hesitantly, I picked up. A voice I recognized all too well murmured, "Clara, darling, it's Mom. Your sister's been in an accident. Come out to the car park. Hurry." My heart froze. My younger sister, Emily, had just started college in a neighboring town. The voice had perfectly imitated my mother's tones. The same slight lilt, the same warmth. Panic welled up, but logic held me in check. I excused myself and walked into the adjacent office, out of earshot, and dialed my mother's number. She picked up immediately, shopping music blaring in the background. "Clara? What's up, sweetie?" Relief washed over me. "Mom, are you shopping?" I asked, voice shaky. She laughed. "Yes, at the mall." "Why?" "No reason," I replied, the dread returning tenfold. Who was replicating these voices, and why target me? The school's security tightened. Cameras were installed, and a police report was filed. But the perpetrator remained elusive. My colleagues were supportive, but I felt isolated, always on edge, waiting for the next phone call. One rainy morning, as I settled into my desk, an unfamiliar number blinked on the phone's display. I hesitated, then answered, bracing myself. "Hello, Clara," said a voice I didn't recognize. It was cold, devoid of emotion. "You've been quite troublesome, you know. All those security measures. It's made things difficult." Fear coursed through me. "Who is this? Why are you doing this?" The voice chuckled. "Because it's fun, watching you jump at every call. But now, Clara, it's time to meet." Every instinct screamed at me to hang up, but a morbid curiosity held me captive. "Look out your window," the voice whispered. I slowly turned, glancing out the window, heart pounding. The parking lot seemed empty, save for one solitary figure standing in the rain, the silhouette of a man, face obscured by the hood of his jacket. He lifted a hand, holding up a phone. Then he began walking towards the entrance. Adrenaline flooded my system. I locked the front office door, shouting for the school security officer, Mr. Patterson. As he came rushing, I pointed out the window, but the figure had vanished. The police were involved again, combing through security footage. They saw the man, but his face was always hidden, always in the shadows. No one recognized him. Days turned into weeks, and the calls stopped. The atmosphere at school returned to normal, but the trauma lingered, leaving me always looking over my shoulder. It was during one of these anxious moments that I received a package at the school's front desk. No return address, just my name. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a simple voice recorder. I pressed play. The sounds of numerous voices echoed, all pleading, all desperate, and among them my own voice, distorted, pleading for the calls to stop. But what sent shockwaves of horror through me was the final message. My voice, clear as day, whispering, "See you soon, Clara." The realization hit me. The perpetrator wasn't mimicking voices. He was recording them from conversations around town, from unsuspecting individuals, from me, using snippets of speech to craft his horrifying messages. To this day, the man remains unidentified. I left St. Peter's and moved to another state.